Well, hello. This is Rochelle, and thank you for joining me here on the Creative Retreat YouTube channel. Today I'm working on some hot pressed watercolor paper, and I'm using my Cricut trimmer just to measure out using the little ruler there, and then the trimmer I use the scoring blade to score what is going to become a card base. I am not a card maker at all, and the kind of craft that goes along with card making has never been something I've done. It's something I truly appreciate, receiving a handmade card, but I just never really have done it. So made my own card base, but using the hot pressed watercolor paper. And the reason for that is because watercolor markers favor hot pressed watercolor paper. It means that if you color directly onto the hot pressed watercolor paper and use an aqua brush or a brush with water, a damp brush, you can move the pigment without it leaving the streaky marks. In other words, it blends really beautifully on hot pressed watercolor paper for your markers specifically. Obviously, normal watercolors work on both cold pressed and hot pressed. How you can tell the difference? Hot pressed watercolor paper has got a really smooth surface, so it won't hurt your marker's nibs, especially if you have brush markers, it won't hurt the brush tip. And cold pressed watercolor paper has got that kind of texture to it. So, absolutely loving these beautiful Faithful Digitals with these sunflowers. And as I said in my unboxing, even the colors, I'm just feeling all of this devotional and content this month. It really has been such a beautiful devotion for me. And I was telling the team how it truly is amazing how God has just been using this word and speaking to my heart for a while now. We are on, I think, week 3 or 4 of a sermon series specifically on James 1, verse 2, and the opportunity that it creates for us to be joyful or to have great joy, is what the New Living Translation says. And with my watercolor marker, I just kind of drew these little twigs with little bubbles at the end of it. And then I'm taking my aqua brush and pulling out the pigment of those little bubbles that I drew at the ends of each of these little twigs. And then that kind of makes what I would be calling a eucalyptus leaf type thing. I don't know. It's not supposed to be realistic. I very much needed this process, and I'm using the olive or cocktail olive pigment ink to just stamp out from a previous stamp set, and the stamp says count it all joy. Again, the same kind of theme for me, and like I said, it's been coming out everywhere, even in my monthly Bible journaling at my shop with a bunch of girls that we get together. This month really has been about counting it all joy, about even the things that were meant to trip you up, that you use that for joy and allow God to then have His way, do the work in you that needs to be done, even in the trial and tribulation, and sometimes even in the mess that we created ourselves. What I was going to say is this verse in the New Living Translation says specifically that it is an opportunity for great joy, not just a little bit of joy, not just survival mode, but really and truly not maintaining, but really and truly thriving, really and truly conquering. James continues and said, let patience have its work. So yes, what a word it really and truly has been. I took that yellow watercolor marker and just used the big broad brush nib and kind of outlined the page. I'm using 3-dimensional glue. This is an Alba brand 3-dimensional glue. So you can also use, I think, like a hot glue gun, although you would have to work a little bit quicker. This one takes quite long to set, but it does then give it that kind of raised effect that you would get, like, say, with foam tape or something like that. It just gives you a bit more flexibility in the sense that obviously if you're working with these kinds of flowers, foam tape, etc., would be a little bit more challenging to get around, whereas this one, you just squirt out this 3-dimensional glue and it then is a little bit raised. I honestly love how this card came out. This card is specifically for a friend. I have a friend who just received some really bad news, and it has been kind of a battle for 3 years, and the outcome is not what they had hoped for. And so there are decisions to be made, and there is just a whole bunch of heavy stuff as they go through kind of the stages of dealing with this. And I had this discussion with her. She goes to the same church as I do, and so we both spoke about this word and how this word is just at the right time. If God took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and looked at the fire and said, "Let me grab you out, let me rescue you before," it would have really just been for them. It wouldn't have, or we don't know. But I look at the effect that it had, that they went through this fire, that they were in the fire, they were identifiable in the fire as being with a fourth person. And while they were there, they came out not even smelling like smoke. So the work that was done in that trial was such that it saved an entire kingdom, that a king came to know God and then decreed a whole new law for an entire kingdom. I think the trial served a purpose bigger than just the three of them. If we look at the sea, the Israelites walking through the sea, they could have probably just been put over top on the other side. But the work that was done by going through was a testimony that served a way bigger purpose than just the thing that can be seen with the eye. So I've got to trust God that in my trials, in my tribulations, yes, I go through some things and it creates in me, it lets patience do its work within me, and that I then have an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to show great joy. But it also has eternal and lasting value, oftentimes in the lives of others. And I honestly, I see my friend, for instance, going through these things, and we get to encourage one another and we get to share the word with one another, and it builds each other up, even though it's not even necessarily just our trial. So I want to encourage you, to whatever trial you are facing and whatever thing you are going through, to consider it an opportunity. And it's actually such a harsh word, an opportunity for great joy. Look for that thing that it is that you're supposed to grow through in this current trial and tribulation. My sister always says that whenever she has to go to hospital, she says, "God, can you show me what it is that I need to do here so that I can get back home?" Many times we go around and round the mountain until we understand what it's all for. So count it all joy, an opportunity for great joy, whatever trials you may face. See you soon. Bye-bye.